We're actually going to take a break from only talking about Facebook ads specifically because there's a more important topic that if you want to be good at scaling a brand or running Facebook ads, you need to understand. I recently sat down with my friend Jared Souza. He is a CFO for e-commerce brands. Him and I are pretty close because we actually work on several brands together. And the reason why we sat down together is because right now when things are tough and margins are disappearing on brands, it's actually decisions people are making in their marketing that is actually running their brands into the ground. This video I'm going to show you from that recording is actually us talking about the financial decisions and how that relates to marketing, to ads. And then if you're not careful, it can actually drive your business to the ground. So I hope you enjoyed. This is a sit down with me and my buddy Jared Souza talking about marketing metrics and marketing decisions that are leading some brands into financial ruin.
Hey,
there you are. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How about you?
Good. So I guess we're live already. That was a little hiccup on my part. I had to add us to the stage. So
hey, everyone.
So we're rolling here on LinkedIn. So we don't really have an agenda, but I'm just going to kind of lead this, I think, and pepper you with questions. So one of the things that you and I talked about was, what I'm seeing with some of my clients is, and especially if I look at year over year, a lot of time, I mean, you know this about me, like I like to look at customer acquisition cost. I look at number of first-time customers they acquired, and year over year, I'm seeing for certain clients kind of a decrease in first-time customers and an increase in that customer acquisition cost. And so,
totally.
So first, I guess, I mean, probably everybody knows you more than they know me, but introduce yourself and because then they'll realize why I wanted to speak with you here on LinkedIn Live. And then we're going to just talk about, like, is marketing leading to financial ruin, and just kind of like what you see from your perspective, what, just strategies that you've been deploying, what's working, some pivots. And like I said, I just have questions that I'm going to ask you, and we'll see if anybody else has questions.
So in the right circles, you are very well known.
They're really tight circles.
And the tight, successful, profitable brands, you are very well known. I can say that firsthand. Yes. So I'm one of the partners at Right Hook Digital. We are an e-commerce growth agency. We essentially work with brands to scale them aggressively. Now, there's a lot of factors, a lot of things that go into play with that, behind ads, retention, even landing pages, a lot that goes into do with that. Now, what I do want to say, though, is I don't think the current market is leading brands to financial ruin. I think the game is getting so much harder. And for example, I was having a conversation with a brand literally just yesterday about this. And I actually have something I'll show you as well, because I think I'll love to get your take on it. But this brand, they were coming to me and they said, like, I've been stuck for like 6 months. I haven't grown. Profit has been staying, even like declining a bit. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, how have you been changing your strategy? And they said, we haven't. I was like, well, that's probably the problem right there is it's gotten so much harder that you have to play the game differently. You have to adopt different rules to play the game. And so that's where there's an 8-figure brand that I was doing some consulting with. And I told him, I said, the name of the game right now is like, how close are you willing to fly to the sun in acquisition and not get burned? What I mean by that is, like, how aggressive are you willing to be? Because this brand, their 8-figure brand, they're saying, hey, I had a competitor that 2 years ago, they were nothing, but they got funding or something and they have just blown past us. They must be spending $1 million a month. I'm like, exactly. Because like they understand, like, they're playing a different game and they're willing to play the hard game, which is I'm going to be insanely aggressive. And so I think right now, if you're not being aggressive, you're probably at the most risk of going into financial ruin, if we want to use that label. So that's my opinion. I think it's just the rules are different.
Yeah, but has that always been the case, right? Like it's always said, like, whoever can spend the most is going to win, right? To acquire customers, right? From marketing perspective, like, but what you're seeing, is that just getting like tighter, like there's more competition, and
I think that's always been what people said, but from my experience, having done this for almost 10 years now, it was a lot of lip service. Because you could still be very profitable, because like you've gone through like 10 years of like a booming market, and like job market's still really good. So I don't think we have a recession right now. But you've gone through such a period of time where it was a lot of lip service, but you were still like front end profitable. So it's easy for you to like spend more. But I think now that the rubber's hitting the road, where it is so much more expensive, and those profits are kind of dwindling away, that's where kind of everyone's freaking out. Because from my experience, even about brands I know firsthand who said that, they never really changed their tactic.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
never like relooked at their numbers. They've had the same targets for like 3 years.
Right. Yeah. I see some of that too, where I guess I would just say founders or brands get complacent, right? Like they think that their acquisition strategy is going to just continue to work how it's always worked, right? And you get complacent because you have healthy profits built in. But you kind of go back to, and once you start seeing those first customers decline or the efficiency of your ads not working as well, it's like, man, if you can get it, if you've got good benchmarks and good KPIs that are working right now, like get as aggressive as you can, because you don't know if they're going to be there next month. There could be algorithm changes. There could be other things that you're not necessarily acquiring customers at the same rate that you were, right?
Right.
And so I'm having more of those conversations.
All right, so I got something I want to show you. I came
Okay.
prepared for this. This is a real example, and for those of you guys watching, I love to throw these curveballs at Jared. So me and Jared,
Yeah.
my favorite things to do is just to give Jared a blank P&L and put him on the spot. It's not going to be a P&L, but
Yeah.
I spent some time, and this is a real situation that's happening with the brand right now. Now, this brand's actually profitable. So they're one of the rare ones. They're actually quite profitable at the moment.
Cool.
But what they're having to deal with is the increasing costs, and that the targets that they've been so comfortable hitting for so long,
Yeah.
it's getting harder and harder. So like just some context here is we started working with this brand about 2 months ago. They came to us because they were trying to maintain a certain in-platform ROAS, which is, I'm going to say right now, ROAS is probably going to lead to your demise. But it's been harder and harder and harder. And so they're having to spend less to maintain that same ROAS. And so I want to walk you through this.
Okay.
All right, so these are real numbers, by the way, but I just kind of format it so it's easier to follow without having to show a P&L to everyone here that doesn't like P&Ls. Okay, so here's the real context. This is the current situation. This brand, we're spending about $74,000 last 30 days.
Hold on. I think I need to add it to the stage.
Oh,
there we go.
okay.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Right.
cool.
So this is the current situation. They're spending $74,000 right now, or we are actually. And the target that was set for us was 5x in platform, which just as a disclaimer, anytime someone gives you an even number as a target, there's a good chance it's not accurate, they're guesstimating, or they're rounding up extremely. Okay, we're selling dresses, which I just freaking love fashion, by the way.
They have good margins
dresses.
usually.
Oh, yeah. And that's what the margins are. So here's the breakdown of the exact costs. That's our cost of delivery. And right now we're getting about a $57 CAC on that at the moment. So that means we're getting about 22% contribution profit per order. Make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay. Their overheads are $77,000 a month. And so kind of add everything up. That's how many orders we've had last 30 days. That's the contribution profit once you take out all the costs. And this is their fixed overheads per month. Now, what's crazy is that's their net profit. But when you include LTV, they have a 9.7% buyback in the first 45 days. So that future 45-day outlook actually looks like this.
Right.
So you see that? So that's what we're facing. So how it works is they say, hey, we want to maintain this target. We want to scale maintaining in platform. We had to have the conversation saying that's not possible.
Yeah. Okay.
So here's what I think is going to make a really good point.
Yeah.
This is a rare one because they're actually quite profitable.
Yeah.
So the argument that we're having with the brand is not an argument, a conversation is, why don't we change the target, be more aggressive? And what if we doubled spend, took a less return?
Yeah.
But what would your actual profit be at the end of the day? So here's the assumption. If we can double spend, be willing to accept a 2.91 in platform.
Okay.
All costs stay the same. We increase our CAC target from $57 to $80, which is a pretty significant increase. We're only making 10% profit on the first order. But if we can double spend, double the amount of orders as well, while net profit will go down, we're going to make almost $50,000 more over a 45-day period because they're going to become new returning customers. So this is the kind of conversation I think a lot of brands need to be having in terms of what is actually the real number of metrics we need to be looking at. What's the real targets? Because this is just first-time customers. I mean, looking at returning customers because this is their new versus returning customer chart over the last probably 15 months. Here's total ad costs. And this light blue line is new customers. Ad spend is almost exactly following the correlation between ad spend and new customers, which makes sense.
Yep.
but their returning customer rate is so good, 9.7% just in the first 45 days. That
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
they
Just
want to keep growing, they have to play a different game.
for sure. Yeah. With those metrics, I would even go as aggressive as just break even
Yeah,
on that acquisition. I
me
would even go
too.
more aggressive than what you said there.
I would
Like,
lose money on the first sale if I can. Baby
Right.
steps, Jared.
right. Yeah. Just as long, then we kind of get back into the operational, like making sure that the sales demand's implemented in place or forecasted so that you're not losing sales. You're not spending money on inventory that they don't have, right? And
Yep,
making
yep.
sure that, all of those things. But yeah, I mean, you actually beat me to the punch where it's like they want to maintain the same metrics but scale. Like it's not going to work.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't. And so really I think that's the hardest thing is that we're facing right now as well is when the conditions are getting harder, what becomes a better North Star metric? And I think a lot of times we have to come back down to our brands of like, what do you want from your business? Like if you want growth, then something has to change. But if you want just to be able to sleep at night and you don't want the stress, then maybe growth isn't right for you. Maybe it is to lean out your business a bit and to
Mhm.
pull back. But the downside of that is you can go out of business if you're not willing to grow as well. Like that's what's scary is if
Right.
you're not willing to grow or maintain a certain amount of growth, then someone could pass you by, the market can change, and then you're kind of in trouble.
Yeah. I think it depends on what they're reliant on, right? And you and I have talked about this before, but if brands are so reliant just on that front end acquisition,
Mm,
they're kind of kicking the can down the road, man. It's
right.
like,
Can't
yeah,
survive.
one little thing, one hiccup, and you could be done. And so I think dialing in, even what you talked about is that customer lifetime growth month over month, like that cohort analysis, making sure that you get that really dialed in and trying to squeeze, not like obviously you want to treat your customers well so that they keep coming back, but you want to continue to sell to them and get as much revenue as you can out of them as they, as time goes on. That's going to help you get more aggressive on the front end.
Well, one thing that would be interesting to get your opinion on is like, how do you make the decision that I want to grow and invest in growth, but clearly my OPEX is higher than it should.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you tell brands at that moment, well, if we're going to invest in growth, let's hold off leaning out for 3 months, 6 months to see if we can grow, to see if that percentage comes down? Or do you recommend that they just start leaning out now, and then if they have to expand as they grow, to do that again?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, but that's one metric that we look at is what's their overhead in terms of percentage of revenue and put some targets around that, right? And so when you have those down months, when your overhead's staying the same and you have a down month in revenue, it could get above that benchmark, unfortunately. And so a lot of times what we do is like on a quarterly basis, we'll send reports of all credit card transactions. So like, are there services that they're not using? And those are minimal, right? But those can add up to $200 to $2,000 a month potentially in services that they're not using. But yeah, you're right. So I think when you're talking about leaning out, it's in what areas do we look at? Like if we did grow, would we need this person if we're talking about labor in place to help us grow? Then it's like, okay, let's like hold off on that. But if it's kind of ancillary things that wouldn't affect one way or the other, and we see that a lot in businesses where there's just expenditures that aren't necessarily needed. So yeah. And I think the biggest mistake though people will make is that they increase their overhead based on a forecasted number, assuming they're going to hit it. And then when they don't, it's like, oh, like here we're laying people off, or we're cutting services. It's like, no, like set that target, grow into that target, and then grow your overhead into that, right? Like that's the way that I like to look at it. Create the forecast. Are we hitting these numbers? And that means that we can, spend more on overhead or other areas of our business.
It's so funny. Like if you had asked me a couple of years ago, my answer had been different. I would say, no, invest in that growth. If you feel like you need those services or you need that personnel, invest in it and then you can grow into it. But now it's like, well, maybe you need to just accept a bit more pain until you can prove that you're getting closer to that target and then make that call. Because for example, there's a brand I'm working with right now, and their business in the first 15 months, they got to $10 million. They just grew like crazy. What happened was Temu came in and wrecked them. Absolutely wrecked them. Temu was selling their product for, I think, like a seventh of the price. People on Amazon are selling it for a seventh of the price. They're just getting wrecked right now. And it's a one-time purchase product. And And I think that's the scariest part, is that they thought they were going to keep growing. They had 15 million, then 20 million. So they invested a lot in their team structure, but now they're kind of having to reverse a lot of those decision makers, which they did the right thing. They got to that revenue first, but now they're taking too long to make some of those calls to cut that stuff. I think right now, what I'd be the most scared of is if you are a one-time purchase business. Like if that is your model, that's the scariest model to be in right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how you're going to survive, especially if we do have a downturn.
Yeah, that is true. So in that particular company, is there no like brand equity among customer base?
Well, that's the thing. Not really, I would say. They're doing the right thing, and they're experimenting with other products and extensions of that product. And I think in that situation, the worst position could be in is if you're a one product store and you don't have a way or a plan or even starting yet to do product expansion.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like if consumption isn't built into your product where people are going to reuse it, you only have one choice to get people to come back. Like you have to launch other things.
So, okay, let me ask you this, 'cause I'm gonna piggyback on that. So let's say there's a company that has just one purchase product, right? And maybe people purchase it once a year. So it's not like it's pretty much a one purchase product.
That's so scary.
So
scary.
But so how would you advise them? Because then if it's like, okay, we got to develop other products. Now we're looking at cash out to get that inventory in. Or would you advise like, no, just look for similar type products that you could potentially drop ship with other vendors and just kind of get some of that revenue coming in?
Really depends on how desperate you are at this point. So I think the safest thing to do is just to do product expansion with other variants. So for example, we have a brand right now where they have one product, but they've been releasing many different colors of that same product. They have like 30 different colors of that product. It's a fashion brand, by the way. And that's a great example where they took that same one and through expansion of the same variants, they were able to expand until they could launch new products. That's a great example. But if you're kind of on the back foot and even that main product, and I think it really comes down to like, how well is the main product performing? If it's that main product, if it's not performing, I don't think expansion on that product line is going to cut it. I think you have to be a bit more aggressive. And so that's what's scary. For example, like Pila K, Simple Modern, massive 9-figure brands. I don't know about you, but I don't know how many different colors of tumblers I'd even want to have, but they have thousands for the same tumbler. Right. They're a great example of like, new is like the greatest word ever said in e-commerce. Just if you say it's new, it's going to bring back someone to come back potentially. But yeah, so if you're really desperate and your product's not working anymore, you got to go a bit more radical. But if it is working, just to kind of hedge your risk, start doing product expansion, like different colors, sizes, patterns, prints.
Yeah. I like that. So, so we're kind of going back to like marketing and financial ruin ads. What are potential some examples that you've seen of like red flags in marketing, in KPIs, in benchmarks that indicates that strategy is not working? Like, what do you guys in your firm look for?
Yeah, so a few things. So I'm gonna start with my pet peeves. I said in the beginning, if any target is a round number, red flag. The number of times you go into a store you go to a store, you buy a product and it's an even number, I can count on one hand. So the chance of that happening is so slim. So like that's a red flag.
I never knew this was such a big pet peeve of yours.
It is, dude. It really is. Because listen, like, I mean, it's different for you, but for us, people pay us to perform. And like a 0.05 ROAS could be the difference between us spending more money and then making more profit, or like us having to pull back spend. So I get pretty crazy about this. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is going to be people aren't looking at what other breakthroughs. Let me tell you what I mean by that is a lot of our brands, we drive their acquisition for them. You should set targets on new customers, but targets on returning customers as well. And I think a red flag there is if you're not setting targets on both, it becomes very easy just to kind of sit back and rely on new customers because it's just easy. Like people pushing buttons for you, you're spending money, and it's just business and traffic's coming in. But really, you have to set targets for both because you need targets for new customers and returning customers. And I think that's a massive red flag. For example, even like that example I showed, a big part of their, like I think it's like 40-50% of their revenue comes from returning customers, which is huge. Like that's like all your profit right there. And in order to grow, new customer becomes that fuel, but then returning also is where the profit comes from. And so what we like to do is let's set targets for both, because
Mhm.
as every week goes by in a month period, you should be reflecting, am I on pace to hit that target? If I'm not, well, then if I don't do something now to change, it's probably not going to happen, right? And so I think that's the other big red flag is, from my experience, the brands that we see, like, a lot of pressure is put on the ads and very little is put on the returning, which is frankly just, I think it's backwards.
Yeah. Well, the front end's the sexy part, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, because so even when, like, on our top tier clients that we create forecasts for, we do it based off of first time customer count, first time customer revenue, returning customer count, right, and kind of those average order values between those two. What CAC are we willing to spend to acquire those first time customers, to get kind of like some benchmarks, I hate the word budgets, but that forecast in for ad spend that it would take to acquire this and generate that revenue. Because at the end of the day, you can't just say, okay, well, this year we want to make 50% more than we did last year. And then if you're not hitting that, you're like, well, what's not working? We don't know if it's first time customers, if it's returning customers. We don't know where to look. So yeah, so I like that one.
The other one is, you're going to love this one, is as you are setting targets for new versus returning customers, you need to be looking at, is my engaged segment inside of my email list, is that also growing as well? Because it's not just your email list, and I took that for granted for years, but it's actually your engaged list. Because if your engaged list is flat, but even top line revenue is increasing, you're kind of in trouble. Like, you want to also see that following in line, the engaged list growing. And I think that's something interesting that we've really changed on that. When you look at the email, engage is like the most important thing to look at for your email segments.
So when you're looking at that, how can people look at that? So I'm assuming most people are on Klaviyo.
Yeah. So you go to Klaviyo, you can create a segment in Klaviyo, and whatever that window is for engage, typically we'll do 90-day typically, as long as unsubscribes and stay low and bounces stay low. But that's like a really good benchmark for most brands, like 90-day engagers.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah,
that's the word, especially when you just look at, a lot of times people won't even look at like active profile, like they look at total profile count. That can be a huge difference.
But you could have like half of them compressed, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So we're at this point again. I'm just going to kind of throw questions at your way. So company has been just kind of going along, not really pivoting, not really getting aggressive, right? All of a sudden things are kind of going south. And so what steps would you take, or what steps has your firm take to, like, is it more testing? I'm just going to kind of throw something out there, but to try and figure out, how can we pivot from this? How can we, get whatever the North Stars that you use, whether it's acquisition, MER, whether it's customer acquisition costs, whether it is ROAS, but to get that back on track, like, what steps do you take?
Okay. So there's a spectrum, how I see it now. Like, this is a spectrum. On one part of the spectrum, and I'm going to use real examples here, is things are going south. Okay. Are you doing the normal things you should be doing to correct that? For example, if you're running ads, are you testing enough with enough creative diversity? Okay. If you are, and things are still going south, well, then there's a good chance there that either their product is saturated, people are rejecting your product, or they just don't care about as much anymore. For example, we have a brand right now we work with.
Ouch, as a founder, that would hurt to hear.
It does. Listen, dude, we have a beauty brand we worked with for over 3 years.
Yeah.
The first year they crushed because it was like a new product. Now everyone sells that product. You can buy the product anywhere. And they've been slowly going down little by little, painfully. And for years we said, you have to launch a radically different product. And they would do like slight variations, but it was never enough to make a difference. This past May, they launched a radically new product. And they're up 50% for the first time in 2 years.
Wow.
Because that's an example where if you're going down, you have to ask yourself, why? Why am I going down? If you're not like doing the things you should be doing, then there's probably breakthroughs you have there. But for example, that brand, over 2 years, we've literally made 2,000 ads for them. Literally made 2,000 ads.
Yeah.
And there's probably a small handful that really spent that were winners. And listen, we're pretty freaking good. And if 1 out of 100 ads are winning for you, and you're actually pretty good, that's a good indication that it's probably not you, it's probably the market. That's just my opinion. So that's where I'd say we call it market sophistication. You have to release what we call a new mechanism into the market, and that's a really great example. So just to recap, are you doing the right successful actions? Sometimes brands, they're going down and they've quit sending emails. They've quit launching new products. They were doing one new product a quarter or a new collection a quarter, and they stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Or they quit doing something that was working before, or they quit putting the attention they were putting into their ads or their influencer programs. Like for a lot of brands, that's actually what's happening that we've seen. They quit doing the right things.
So what, and like, I only made this LinkedIn live for like 30 minutes. So I don't know if we have 5 minutes and it just automatically stops. So we'll see what happens. I'll let you know when we get close. So kind of knowing all that, like, what do you foresee, kind of like the future of e-com, of D2C marketing? Like, where do you see it evolving? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. So I actually did a post about this not too long ago. I have a few beliefs.
Yeah.
So the first belief is I think that there's still going to only be 3 main platforms everyone does advertising on that are actually successful. Unless you're like a plus 30, 40 million a month, no one's going to be spending money on TV and other stuff. There's going to be 3 main platforms. So what that means is I really believe that we're kind of going back to, I'd say like this, like 2007, where things are going to get very siloed. So you're going to have Meta, you're going to have Google, which are all their properties. You're going to have TikTok, for example. What I mean by very siloed is people are going to have to go after pockets of people that relate to a brand. So if like I'm a fashion brand to like white girls, for example, I'm going to have to do specific collaborations with them, run ads from their account from them, pay them to promote my product, which that's already happening, but things can get more extreme personally. The other thing as well is, I think, which I already said this, is first-time profitable brands, I think is going to go by the wayside. You're going to rely on marketplaces.
Yeah.
So like Amazon, Walmart, or Google Shopping just to even make any money. I think it's going to go by the wayside, frankly, unless you expand to like other markets. I think in addition to that is I'm a really huge believer in going back to as close to word of mouth as possible. What I mean by that is I'm starting to see this with our brands, that the brands who are front facing and go live, even though they're not doing TikTok shop, but they go live, they see a bit more outside success than the others, because people have so much of a bullcrap radar now that you have to do something to cut through that. And so typically, like, just being willing to be front facing, it makes a big difference. To be
honest. Got it. I know. Yeah. That's good. Shoot, I had a question that I was piggybacking off of that, and now it just left my mind. You were talking about, word of mouth. So what about you see these apps, like one of the big ones is Social Snowball.
Yes.
Right. Like, do you see that those working, like prompting, and again, I don't know that much about it, but prompting customers to like post pictures or push things on social platforms, which gives validity and is almost kind of like a word of mouth.
Yeah, sure.
Piece of content. Do you see that those working in any of brands that you work with?
I think affiliates from now until the end of time are going to be amazing channels. One thing I really believe too is, like, with dwindling margins, I believe more and more companies are going to be monetizing other ways. For example, your most successful asset you have in your brand is your list. I think people are going to start monetizing their lists, selling other products as affiliates themselves, non-competing products, or selling dedicated advertising space in their email, on their website, because you could potentially make an additional 5% gross profit by doing that, depending how big you are. So I think they're going to have to monetize other ways just to stay alive. I think they're going to start monetize, like, if they have a big following, if they have a group. Again, like if I sold a product as a one purchase product, but then there's other people that were non-competing, why not, right?
Yeah.
If it's going to add value to your customer.
Right. So I think we might have 1 minute left. Again, I don't know if this is going to shut off, but so you got 1 minute, Ray.
All right.
So right now, like what are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give to e-com D2C founder who's kind of struggling with their marketing strategy? Like
9 out of 10 brands need to raise their prices, not on all products, but they need to on their best-selling product, raise your prices because people will notice.
Mhm.
Number two,
People don't notice you don't see a decrease in conversion.
Heck no, rare. Like out of 5 years, I've only seen one brand do it and it backfired, but it
Yeah.
was a totally different situation.
That's the fear, though. Yeah.
Even if you raise it 10%, like that's, anyways.
Right.
Okay. So number one, number two is going to be you need to set clear targets for new and returning customers, and you have to
Mhm.
own those. So returning's not doing well, do some kind of activity to make that happen.
Yep.
Make it get better. And then I would say the number three, this is a personal pet peeve, is I think most brands need to let their hair down a lot more in their marketing. Okay.
Well, it hasn't ended, so we're gonna let
Okay.
you finish it. Okay, so what do you mean, like, let their hair down?
Yeah. So I'm not the first person to say this, but people vote with their dollars what they think of you and your marketing. And so if your sales are going down, it means that they're voting that they don't like you anymore or they don't like your product. Like, it's harsh, but that's just the cruelty of the world.
I mean, you're just saying like what the data is already saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And so I think a lot of brands that we work with, it's an ongoing conversation where they have some success, they have less success. There could be many different factors for that. And so it's a really good time that if you want a radically different change, do something radically different.
Yeah.
And majority of the time, especially with, since like half our brands we work with are fashion, they have this branding ideology that they're so stuck on keeping. It could also be the exact same thing that's keeping you stuck as well. And so my recommendation is just be significantly more curious. And again, let numbers aside. If more people buy from something and it wasn't on brand, you should probably take a look at that.
Mm-hmm. So raise your prices, understand first time versus returning customers, set benchmarks and own those. Let your hair down.
Let your hair down.
Let your hair down. I like that one. Cool. Nice, dude. Well, we're at the 30-minute mark, man. This was great.
Yeah, it was. We need to get coffee, by the way. It's been a while.
We do need to get coffee, but we need to do this more often too, because I think this is very beneficial. I mean, I'm seeing clients and like I see the data, I see the financial side, I see the metrics, right? I see all of the analytics, but I don't see the creative. I don't see how much is testing. And so I think one of those two, like we should jump back on and just talk about like how much do you allocate for testing? Because a lot of times people don't understand that, right? They just have an ad that's working and they try to ride Seabiscuit until Seabiscuit collapses.
And that's the scary part. So I think that'd be a good talk. I actually made a calculator to show like directionally how many ads you should be testing. Ooh. And it's more than you typically think.
Yeah.